The 1% Rule. Small Daily Improvements for Massive Life Transformation. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. There's a reason gyms are packed in January and ghost towns by March. A reason planners fill up with goals that never make it past the second page. It's not because people don't care. It's because they've been taught to chase change in the wrong way. We're told to swing big, dream bigger, set massive goals and rise before dawn to conquer them. And for a while, that works, until real life shows up with dishes in the sink, deadlines at work, and just enough exhaustion to make maybe tomorrow the new routine. But what if change didn't have to be loud, dramatic, or exhausting? What if your life could shift in the quietest way possible, one tiny choice at a time? That's what this book is about, learning to bet on the small things, the invisible actions. The ordinary moments that compound when no one's watching, because that's where real transformation happens, not in one grand gesture, but in 1,000 small ones stacked like bricks. You don't need to become superhuman. You just need to get 1% better each day. It sounds too simple, too easy to matter, but that's the brilliance of it. One healthy meal won't change your body. One kind word won't heal a relationship. One productive hour won't define a career. But done daily, they all eventually do. It's not what we do once in a while that shapes our lives, but what we do consistently, said Oprah Winfrey. And she's right. Consistency is the real magic, not willpower, not intensity, not big leaps, inside these pages. You won't find a 30-day challenge or a rigid routine. You'll find a philosophy, a strategy, a new way to approach progress that fits into your real life, not the fantasy version where you suddenly have unlimited time, energy, and motivation. The 1% Rule will teach you how to choose better, live smarter, and build habits that stick, not because they're hard, but because they're small enough to win. If you've struggled to stay consistent, felt crushed by the weight of big goals, or wondered why change never seems to last, this book will meet you where you are. And from there, we'll move forward, quietly, powerfully, 1% at a time. Chapter 1. The Power of 1%, Why Big Isn't Better. Jen sat at her desk, staring down a color-coded spreadsheet titled Total Life Overhaul. The categories were ambitious: 5 a.m. wake-ups, no sugar, 60-minute workouts, inbox zero, meditate, journal, and read a book a week. It was Monday. By Thursday she was binging chips and watching reality TV, her planner abandoned like last year's gym membership. This is the trap of the giant leap. It feels noble to promise yourself a total reinvention, but like sprinting uphill with a backpack full of bricks, it's unsustainable. That's not failure, it's physics. We crave instant transformation because it gives us emotional payoff up front. We feel powerful in the planning stage. But change doesn't care how inspired you are, it rewards what you repeat. That's where the 1% Rule steps in, not as a shortcut, but as the only path that actually works. The premise is simple: small daily improvements compound into massive results over time. Improve by 1% each day, and by the end of the year you're not 365% better, you're nearly 37 times better. That's not motivational fluff. That's math, compound interest, but for your habits, mindset, and identity. The human brain is wired to seek progress, but it often misjudges what progress looks like. We celebrate the dramatic and overlook the consistent. A 5-minute walk doesn't make headlines. Drinking 1 glass of water instead of soda won't impress your friends, but do it daily? It rewrites your biology, your brain, and your beliefs. Consider James. Overwhelmed by the thought of fixing everything, his health, his stress, his sleep, he did one thing. He walked for 5 minutes each morning, not a run. Not a Peloton. Just a walk. 1 month later, he added stretching. Then he swapped 1 soda for water. A year later, James had lost 30 pounds, was meditating daily, and had written a book. Not because of one grand gesture, but because of a quiet, consistent climb. The 1% Rule doesn't ask you to leap. It asks you to lean. Every time you choose a small action over doing nothing, you cast a vote for the person you're becoming. That vote doesn't win the election. But keep voting, and soon your identity is no longer a wish, it's a fact. Big change feels good until it doesn't. Small change feels pointless until it doesn't. That's the paradox. When you focus on outcomes, you'll always feel behind. But when you focus on consistency, you start to feel like the kind of person who shows up, and that feeling fuels the next small step. So what does this look like today? You pick one area: health, work, relationships, mindset. You identify one action so small it's impossible to fail. You do it, not because it changes your life instantly, but because it proves something: you're capable of movement. And movement creates momentum. Some days, your 1% might feel like cheating. You'll think, this is too easy to matter. That's the point. You don't need a breakthrough. You need a breadcrumb trail that leads you forward. Your only job is to follow it. The 1% rule is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's the quiet confidence that whispers, I may not be there yet, but I'm on the path. Small steps, stacked daily, become strides, then miles. Then the momentum's so strong it's harder to stop than it is to keep going. Today, pick one thing. Do it small. Do it consistently. That's how transformation begins. So quietly you won't notice until everyone else does. Small wins compound into massive results. Big change often fails. Tiny steps succeed. Identity shifts with consistent micro actions. Where in your life are you trying to leap when a step would serve you better? Pick one area. Choose one 1% action. Do it today, no matter how small. Chapter 2. Micro wins, major momentum, how to build an unbreakable habit loop. In a cramped apartment with dishes stacked high and laundry begging for attention, Darren stared at a blinking cursor. His dream was to write a novel, but between his job, his exhaustion, and his phone buzzing every 12 seconds, he hadn't typed a single word in weeks. One morning, he made himself a deal: just write one sentence. No expectations, no pressure. One sentence. That morning, he wrote 3. The next day, 5. Within a month, he had a writing habit. Not because he became disciplined overnight, but because he lowered the bar until success felt inevitable. Tiny wins like that seem trivial in the moment, but the brain doesn't think so. Each completed task, no matter how small, triggers a release of dopamine, the chemical of reward. It's not the size of the task that matters, but the consistency of the signal. Do something small, feel good. Do it again, feel better. That's how habits stick, not through force, but through feedback. Most people try to build habits using willpower, which is like trying to build a house with duct tape. It works until it doesn't. The real power lies in designing a loop the brain can follow automatically: cue, routine, reward. A cue reminds you. The routine is the behavior. The reward makes you want to do it again, repeat it enough. And it becomes easier to do than not to do. The problem is, most people make the loop too complicated. Take fitness. They wait until they have 90 minutes, clean workout gear, the perfect playlist, and a surge of motivation. Miss one element, and the habit collapses. But what if the cue was just putting on sneakers? What if the routine was 5 jumping jacks? What if the reward was checking a box that says I moved today? It sounds silly, until you realize you're building a habit that lasts, not a workout that impresses. Momentum doesn't come from grand actions. It comes from frictionless victories. When something is too hard, the brain resists. But when it's too easy to skip, it becomes automatic. 1 glass of water before coffee. 1 push-up after brushing teeth. 1 page of reading before sleep. These actions are small enough to succeed, but meaningful enough to build belief. Belief is what really changes you, not the action itself, but what it represents. When you do something small and repeatable, you stop seeing yourself as someone trying to change. You start seeing yourself as someone who does this. A reader. A runner. A writer. That shift is subtle, but it's everything. Behavior fuels identity. Identity fuels consistency. Consistency fuels momentum. Darren never planned to write 500 words a day. He just wanted to avoid breaking the streak. One sentence became a story. A story became a chapter. Momentum made it harder to stop than to keep going. That's the secret. You don't fight inertia with intensity. You fight it with a tiny motion. Over time, those micro wins become the flywheel of your transformation. But you have to start low, so low it feels like cheating. You're not training for a marathon, you're learning to lace up your shoes. You're not meditating for an hour, you're closing your eyes for 60 seconds. You're not overhauling your schedule, you're setting a 2-minute timer to focus. Easy wins now, bigger victories later. If it's not automatic, it's fragile. If it's not simple, it's brittle. But if it's satisfying, your brain will crave more. That's how the loop locks in. Cue, routine, reward, repeat. Until one day you look up and realize you've become someone who just does this. That's momentum. That's the 1% rule in motion. Habits stick when they're small, satisfying, and consistent. The habit loop: cue, routine, reward is your brain's favorite cycle. Tiny wins build identity, and identity builds momentum. What's one micro habit you can design today that feels too easy to fail? Create one friction-free habit loop. Pick a cue, a tiny action, and a reward. Repeat it today. Chapter 3. Identity first. Why who you are beats what you do. Chris used to say, "I'm just not the kind of person who exercises." It wasn't a complaint. It was a declaration, like someone admitting they're allergic to cats. He believed it so deeply that even when he tried to work out, he'd self-sabotage within a week. Then one day something shifted. Instead of forcing himself into another intense fitness plan, he told himself, "I'm becoming the kind of person who moves his body daily." The difference was subtle. But it changed everything. People often focus on what they want to do: eat better, save money, get organized. But behind every action is an identity. And when your identity conflicts with your behavior, identity wins. If you see yourself as bad with money, no budgeting app will save you. If you believe you're just not a morning person, your alarm clock doesn't stand a chance. Action without alignment eventually snaps. Here's the trap: most people think they need to achieve success before they can claim a new identity. But it works in reverse. Identity is not the finish line. It's the foundation. You don't become a runner after your first marathon. You become a runner the moment you decide to run, even if it's just around the block. Every time you act, you vote for the kind of person you are. The more votes, the stronger the identity. This is why 1% improvements matter so much. They may not seem impressive on the surface, but each one is a micro vote for a new you. One healthy meal, one kind word, one focused work session. Each one whispers, "This is who I am now." Over time, the volume gets louder. Eventually, you start to believe it. The behavior change that sticks is identity-based. You're not just building better habits, you're building a better self-image. That means your question shifts from "what do I want to achieve?" "Who do I want to become?" The first question leads to pressure, the second leads to power. The brain is always looking for evidence to confirm its beliefs. When you identify as someone who writes, every paragraph proves the story you've already told yourself. When you identify as someone who shows up on time, every punctual moment reinforces that narrative. This becomes a feedback loop. Identity shapes action, action shapes identity. Round and round it goes. Chris didn't wake up one morning suddenly loving exercise. But when he started walking each day, not to burn calories, but to prove to himself he was someone who moved, his mindset shifted. He no longer felt like he was forcing a change, he felt like he was becoming someone new. That's the difference between discipline and alignment. Discipline forces. Identity flows. So how do you shift identity? Start small. Choose a quality you want to embody: focused, calm, strong, kind. Then ask, what's one thing that version of me would do today? Do that. Don't wait until you feel like it. Don't wait until it's convenient. Just act like the person you want to become. Eventually, you won't be acting. This is not about lying to yourself. It's about claiming the truth early. Every time you show up, you reinforce the identity you're building. You're no longer changing behavior, you're reinforcing belief. You're no longer chasing success, you're becoming the kind of person who succeeds. And when that's who you are, results follow naturally. Identity shapes behavior, not the other way around. Each 1% improvement is a vote for the person you're becoming. Long-term change happens when action aligns with belief. What identity have you been carrying that's quietly holding you back? Choose one identity you want to build. Do one small action today that proves it. Chapter 4. The myth of motivation: why discipline isn't the answer either. Nina woke up with the best of intentions. Her gym bag was packed, her alarm was set, She even posted a motivational quote the night before: "Discipline is doing it even when you don't feel like it." But when the morning chill hit and her bed whispered sweet nothings, motivation vanished like mist in sunlight. She rolled over, hit snooze, and promised herself tomorrow would be different. It wasn't. We blame ourselves when this happens. Not motivated enough. Not disciplined enough. But maybe the problem isn't us, it's the myth we've been sold. Motivation is often glorified as the key to success. Discipline is its tougher cousin, dressed in boot camp slogans. Yet both are fleeting. Relying on them is like building a house on sand. They shift, they sink, they disappear when you need them most. Motivation is emotion-based. It's powerful but unstable. It surges when you're inspired, when you watch a video montage or read an uplifting story, but emotion fades. Life doesn't care how motivated you are on Monday if you quit by Wednesday. Discipline, though better, still runs on fuel that eventually runs out. It's willpower. And willpower is a limited resource. It drains throughout the day, just like your phone battery. What works better than motivation or discipline? Systems. Routines. Environments designed for success. You don't need to feel like it when the path is friction-free. You just need a process that makes action easier than inaction. People who appear disciplined often aren't gritting their teeth every day. They've simply built systems that remove decision-making. They've replaced pressure with design. Think of brushing your teeth. You don't need a pep talk. You don't rely on motivation. It's automatic. Why? Because it's been installed as a non-negotiable habit. The goal is to make your 1% actions just as mindless. When the behavior is part of your routine, the question isn't do I feel like it, but when in my flow does it happen? Nina eventually learned this. Instead of battling herself each morning, she set up a tiny ritual. She put her workout shoes next to her bed, laid her clothes out, and made her goal laughably simple: put on the shoes and walk for 5 minutes. That's it. No heroic effort. No mental wrestling. The ritual became automatic. And once she started moving, 5 minutes often became 15. Momentum kicked in, not motivation. It's not that motivation is useless. It's just unreliable. Like a flaky friend who shows up when things are fun but disappears when you need help moving furniture. Systems are loyal. They show up even when you don't want to. They carry you through the dips. So build systems. Create anchors in your day that make good choices easy. Tie your new habit to something you already do. Drink water after brushing your teeth. Stretch while the coffee brews. Write one sentence after opening your laptop. Reduce friction. Hide the junk food. Put your journal on your pillow. Make the good stuff obvious, the bad stuff invisible. If you build your habits on motivation, you'll crash. If you build on discipline alone, you'll burn out. But if you build on structure, you'll win by default. The 1% rule isn't about forcing yourself to succeed, it's about setting the stage so success is the natural next step. You don't have to feel ready, you just have to make it easy to start. Motivation is emotional, discipline is limited, systems are sustainable. Design your environment so good behavior happens automatically. Remove friction and rely on structure, not willpower. Where are you still relying on motivation instead of building a system? Or pick one habit. Create a 2-step system that makes starting effortless. Chapter 5. The Daily 1%. Designing a tiny ritual that changes everything. Every morning at 7:03 a.m., Marcus places his phone face down, pours black coffee into the same chipped mug, and opens his journal to a single page with one question. What's my 1% today? Sometimes the answer is a stretch. Sometimes it's a walk. Sometimes it's a difficult conversation he's been avoiding. But always, it's one thing. Small, clear, doable. And that tiny ritual has quietly changed his life. The world is full of people chasing massive results, transformation, breakthroughs, explosions of success. But breakthroughs don't happen in a vacuum. They're the visible result of invisible consistency. 1%, repeated. The trick is designing a ritual that lowers resistance, removes decisions, and reminds you who you're becoming. Most people don't fail because they lack goals, they fail because they don't have rituals. Goals are outcomes. Rituals are identity reinforcers. The former you chase. The latter you live. That's the difference between wishing and becoming. One relies on pressure, the other runs on rhythm. So, what exactly is a 1% ritual? It's a daily practice so small you can't excuse your way out of it. It starts your momentum. It anchors your identity. It may look like a checklist, but it functions like a compass. Done right, it sets your day on a trajectory that feels purposeful, even when everything else feels chaotic. The key is simplicity. If your ritual requires 20 minutes and 6 steps, you'll skip it the moment life gets busy. But if it takes under 5 minutes, and it's tied to something you already do, you'll keep it. Rituals work when they're friction-free. Think less morning routine and more ignition switch. Marcus didn't wait for the perfect journal or the ideal morning to start. He printed one question on a blank page and committed to answering it daily. No overthinking. No rewriting his entire day, just one action to move the needle. Some days it was send that email. Other days it was don't check Instagram before noon. Small things. But over time, the ritual created a feedback loop. I act with intention, therefore I am intentional. That's the power of design. Instead of relying on memory or motivation, you design behavior into your environment. Want to eat healthier? Place fruit on the counter and hide the chips. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow. Want to stretch each morning? Lay out the mat before bed. Rituals start in the mind, but they stick when embedded into the physical world. The 1% rule isn't about doing more. It's about doing less better. And to do better, you need a predictable starting point, a trigger, a time, a behavior. Then repeat every day. Not for perfection, not for performance, but for proof that you're becoming the kind of person who shows up. Over time, your ritual evolves. It adapts. But the core remains, one small action, done daily, with intention. That's it. That's the difference between people who wait for life to change and people who change their lives by design. So what's your ignition switch? Your version of Marcus's question? Find it. Anchor it. Repeat it. Because the secret to massive transformation isn't in doing more. It's in doing one thing, consistently, until the new you becomes obvious to everyone, even yourself. A 1% ritual is a tiny daily anchor that builds identity and momentum. Simplicity and consistency are more powerful than complexity. And design behavior into your environment to make success frictionless. What's one daily ritual you can create that takes less than 5 minutes and reinforces who you want to become? Choose your 1% ritual. Attach it to something you already do. Start tomorrow, no exceptions. Chapter 6. When life gets messy, how to stay consistent when you're not feeling it. Rain fell sideways as Ava sat in her car, watching her gym's glowing sign through the windshield. She'd been crushing her 1% habit, 10-minute workouts every morning, but that morning her toddler had a meltdown, her coffee spilled on her white blouse, and her inbox exploded before 9 a.m. She was tired, stressed, frustrated. The thought of even a short workout made her want to drive straight home and bury herself in snacks and shame. But then she asked herself, what's the tiniest version of my habit I can do right now? She did one squat in the parking lot, laughed, and drove off. It wasn't anything. It was something. That's the difference between consistency and perfection. Life will get messy. Motivation will vanish. But if your success depends on ideal conditions, you've already lost. The real test isn't how well you do on your best days, it's how you show up on the worst ones. The 1% rule works because it makes space for mess. It assumes chaos. It's not a rigid system, it's a resilient one. Most people fall into the trap of all or nothing thinking. If I can't do the full workout, why bother? If I ate one bad meal, the whole day's ruined. But this mindset is like slashing 3 tires because one went flat. The better mindset? Do something. Anything. Because something keeps the identity intact. Consistency doesn't mean intensity. It means returning to your baseline, even when the storm hits. Think of habits like a campfire. You don't need to keep it blazing all day, just don't let the flame go out. On hard days, a spark is enough. A text instead of a call. A stretch instead of a workout. A deep breath instead of a meditation session. Tiny actions that say, I'm still in the game. To prepare for messy days, you need a habit floor, the absolute minimum version of your 1% that you'll do no matter what. If your standard habit is journaling for 5 minutes, your floor is writing 1 sentence. If it's running a mile, you're putting on your shoes and walking to the mailbox. When you lower the bar on bad days, you protect the streak, and the streak is what builds momentum. Ava started celebrating bare minimum days, not because they were impressive, but because they reinforced who she was. Even on the worst days, she still acted in alignment with her identity. That's where real power lives. In the quiet decision to stay in motion, even if it's crawling. Another trick is to separate action from emotion. You don't have to feel good to do good. You just have to move. When you train your body to act regardless of mood, you stop being a slave to your feelings. You build grit. And grit isn't loud or dramatic, it's stubborn. It whispers, "I'll show up, even if it's ugly." Eventually, Ava's consistency outlived her chaos. Her life didn't magically calm down, but her habits became non-negotiable. They flexed when they needed to, but they never broke. That's what the 1% rule offers, a way to keep going, especially when you don't feel like it. You don't need perfect days. You need persistent ones. On your worst day, shrink the habit and do the floor. Protect the flame. And trust that every tiny act is still pointing you in the right direction. Life gets messy. Your habits should bend, not break. The habit floor keeps momentum alive on your worst days. Consistency beats intensity when conditions aren't ideal. What's one habit you can shrink when life feels overwhelming, but still honors your commitment? Choose your habit floor today. Write it down, commit to doing it, even when everything goes wrong. Chapter 7. Compound Kindness, How 1% Changes Relationships. When Ethan got home from work, he followed his usual routine: shoes off, phone out, mind elsewhere. His wife greeted him, but his response was autopilot, distracted, mumbled, barely present. This pattern had become normal. But one evening he paused before stepping inside and thought, what would 1% better look like right now? So he put his phone in a drawer, looked her in the eyes and said, "I'm glad to be home." It took 5 seconds. Her smile lasted all night. Relationships don't erode from single acts of cruelty. They wear down from consistent inattention, missed moments, glazed over glances, silence where words could have been. The good news? They can be rebuilt just as quietly. Not through grand gestures, but through micro deposits of care. Small, deliberate acts done consistently. This is how 1% transforms connection. Most people think relational improvement requires date nights, heart-to-hearts, or week-long vacations. And those have value. But they're rare. What matters more is the daily rhythm, the check-ins, the unexpected compliment, the pause before responding. These don't require effort as much as intention, and intention compounds. The same way small actions compound into physical transformation, kindness compounds into emotional trust. A 30-second hug, a post-it note, asking a real question instead of "How was your day?" Each one is a relational investment. Do it once, and it's nice. Do it daily, and you change the atmosphere between you. Here's the trap. People wait until things are broken before trying to fix them. They assume effort should match the size of the problem. But often, small consistent actions prevent the problem from growing in the first place. You don't need to rebuild your relationship if you never stop building it. Ethan began doing one small kind act per day. Sometimes a compliment. Sometimes a chore done without being asked. Sometimes simply being fully present. It wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent. Over time, his home became less about managing tension and more about exchanging peace. He wasn't trying to impress, he was choosing to invest. These micro actions work in all relationships: partners, children, friends, and coworkers. People remember how you make them feel more than what you say. You don't need perfect words. You need presence. And presence isn't about time. It's about attention. Imagine a relationship as a bank account. Every act of listening, empathy, or affection is a deposit. Every snap, eye roll, or ignored message is a withdrawal. You don't have to be flawless, you just need more deposits than withdrawals. The 1% rule is how you stay in the positive. And when conflict does come, as it inevitably will, you have trust in the bank. You've built up so much goodwill through small daily actions that one disagreement doesn't bankrupt you. That's the compound interest of connection. The key is to make it simple. Don't try to overhaul your communication style overnight. Just ask yourself each day, what's one small thing I can do to show up better? Maybe it's listening fully before replying. Maybe it's putting your phone away during dinner. Maybe it's choosing not to say the snarky thing, even though it would be satisfying in the moment. Kindness doesn't have to be dramatic, it just has to be real and repeated. Over time, those tiny choices change not just how others see you, but how they feel around you. And that's everything. Relationships thrive on small, consistent acts of kindness. Emotional trust builds like savings, deposit daily, protect the balance. You don't need more time, just more intention. Where in your relationships are you waiting to fix something instead of building something? Pick one person. Do one unexpected kind thing for them today, no matter how small. Chapter 8. Health by Inches. Tiny Levers for Physical Transformation. Logan stood in the grocery aisle, staring at two options, soda or sparkling water. It wasn't a life-changing decision, or so it seemed. But he remembered his new rule: choose the 1% better option. He grabbed the sparkling water. That one decision didn't transform his body, but it marked the beginning of dozens like it. Weeks later, his energy improved. Months later, his waistline shrank. A year later, he didn't recognize the guy who used to crush a 2-liter before bed. Most people treat health like a sprint. Sign up for a challenge. Eliminate carbs, join a gym, go hard, then crash hard. They treat the body like a project instead of a relationship. But the body doesn't thrive on punishment. It thrives on consistency, and consistency thrives on simplicity. The 1% rule flips the script. Instead of chasing dramatic overhauls, it invites you to focus on micro adjustments. One less sugar packet. One more glass of water. A 2-minute stretch while the coffee brews. These choices won't earn you a 6-pack overnight, but they do something more powerful. They shift your identity to someone who chooses health daily. The real enemy isn't a lack of knowledge, it's overwhelming. Should you intermittent fast? Cut dairy? Count macros? Walk 10,000 steps? Take ice baths? When people are drowning in options, they freeze, so they do nothing. The antidote isn't more advice, it's smaller steps. You don't need to solve health, you just need to start nudging it. The body responds to inputs over time. You don't have to be perfect to see progress. You just have to interrupt the downward spiral. And you can do that with the tiniest lever. Swapping fries for fruit, parking farther away, doing 10 air squats before your shower. Each one plants a flag in the ground. I care about my health. I make choices with that in mind. Logan didn't become healthy because he found the perfect plan. He became healthy because he found actions that felt too small to skip. His workouts began with 5 push-ups. His diet began with 1 swap drink. His sleep improved by turning off screens 10 minutes earlier. Every win was small, but each one compounded into a lifestyle. This is the part most people overlook. Sustainability beats intensity. Can you do this for a week isn't the question. Can you do it for a year, a lifetime, a Tuesday when you're exhausted and annoyed? That's what matters, and that's what 1% habits solve. They're sustainable by design. Your health isn't a single choice. It's 1,000 micro decisions made over months and years. You can't outwork inconsistency, but you can outsmart it. Create defaults that are easy to follow. Prep meals so healthy food is the easy choice. Pack gym clothes the night before. Walk during calls. Make the healthy path the path of least resistance. The 1% rule doesn't promise overnight abs or miracle weight loss. It offers something better, a steady, unshakable shift, one where your choices align with the person you want to be. And over time, your body catches up to your identity. Health isn't about punishment. It's about partnership. Treat your body with 1% more care, and it will return the favor, inch by inch, breath by breath. Small, repeatable health choices compound into lasting change. Overwhelm kills momentum. Simplicity keeps it alive. Sustainability matters more than intensity in long-term wellness. What's one tiny health decision you could make today that your future self would thank you for? Make one 1% health swap today: food, movement, or sleep. Keep it small. Make it stick. Chapter 9. Work smarter, not harder. How 1% upgrades your career. Clara was drowning in tasks, emails, meetings, deadlines, all demanding her attention like toddlers with sticky fingers. She prided herself on being busy, but her results didn't reflect her effort. She stayed late, skipped breaks, checked work messages at dinner, and still felt behind. One day, frustrated and burned out, she asked herself, what if I just improved one small thing at work each day? That question became her rescue line. In a world that worships hustle, slowing down feels like failure. But being busy isn't the same as being productive. True progress isn't found in doing more. It's found in doing better. That's where the 1% rule comes in. Small, consistent improvements in how you work can unlock massive career gains without the burnout badge. Start with focus. Most people lose hours to context switching, bouncing between emails, chats, and spreadsheets. Every switch costs mental energy. A study once showed it takes over 20 minutes to refocus after an interruption. Imagine losing that 20 minutes 5 times a day. That's nearly 2 hours of your brain scattered into pixels. 1% better might mean turning off notifications during deep work, or batching emails instead of reacting to every ping. Then there's your calendar. Instead of letting others fill it like a grab bag, treat it like a blueprint. Block time for your highest value work before anyone else can claim it. Schedule 15 minutes at the start of your day to plan, not panic. Clara began using that time to identify her one thing for the day, the single task that, if completed, would move her forward. It made her feel focused instead of frantic. 1% can also mean organizing your tools. Clear digital clutter. Unsubscribe from email lists you never read. Use templates for recurring tasks. Set up keyboard shortcuts. These aren't game-changing by themselves, but they create smoother systems. And smoother systems make more energy available for the work that matters. Relationships at work? Same rule applies. 1 compliment. 1 thank you note. 1 extra question to understand a colleague better. These small interactions build trust, and trust multiplies effectiveness. When people like working with you, they listen more, support more, and collaborate better. Emotional intelligence, done 1% at a time, becomes a career advantage. Even your mindset can get a 1% upgrade. Start asking better questions. Instead of, how do I get through this day? Try, how can I create more value in less time? Or, what's one thing I can automate, delegate, or delete? One new question can lead to a whole new approach. Clara didn't overhaul her job overnight, but she started stacking small changes. She stopped checking email first thing. She began ending meetings with 1 action step. She started saying no to work that didn't move her closer to her goals. Over time, she felt less like a hamster on a wheel and more like a pilot in control. The workplace rewards results, not exhaustion. People remember what you deliver, not how busy you look doing it. The 1% rule gives you a quiet advantage. While others scramble, you're designing. While others react, you're refining, 1 tweak at a time. Work smarter, not harder. That's not just a cliche, it's a strategy. And it starts with 1%. Career growth comes from strategic micro-improvements, not constant hustle. Protecting focus and designing systems beats reacting all day. Small changes to mindset, tools, and relationships compound into big advantages. Where are you mistaking busyness for progress in your work life? Pick one area of your work, email, meetings, tasks, and make a 1% improvement today. Chapter 10. Future You. How to think in years instead of days. In a dusty box under the bed, Maya found a letter she wrote to herself 5 years ago. It was full of big dreams: write a book, run a half marathon, start a business. She had achieved none of them, not because she was lazy, but because she was impatient. She had chased quick wins and abandoned them when results didn't come fast enough. Looking back, she didn't need more ambition, she needed a longer timeline. The 1% rule lives in the present but thinks in the future. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. When you think short term, everything feels urgent. When you think long term, everything gets strategic. You stop asking, did today fix my life? And start asking, did today point me in the right direction? Long-term thinking isn't just about goals. It's about identity. Who are you becoming? And how can today's 1% action reinforce that identity, even if it doesn't produce immediate results? A walk today won't get you fit, but it makes you someone who moves. Reading one page won't make you wise, but it makes you someone who learns. Thinking in years lets you value these small actions properly. The problem is, we're wired for instant gratification. Dopamine floods the brain when we get likes, clicks, or Amazon packages. But lasting success rarely gives that kind of rush. It's slow, quiet, unimpressive. Until suddenly it isn't. Then everyone calls it an overnight success, forgetting the years of invisible work. To break free from short-term traps, you need a clear picture of your future you, not just what they have, but who they are. How do they handle stress? How do they speak to others? What habits are automatic for them? Paint the picture in detail. Then use that image as a compass. When faced with a choice, ask, what would future me do? That question cuts through noise fast. Maya started using this principle daily. Instead of chasing hacks, she asked herself each morning, what's one thing I can do today that my future self will thank me for? Some days, it was taking a walk instead of collapsing on the couch. Other days, it was sending an uncomfortable email. None of them changed her life immediately. But together, they built a version of herself she barely recognized a year later. Another powerful shift is measuring the right things. Short-term thinkers obsess over outcomes. Long-term thinkers measure consistency. One missed workout doesn't matter. Skipping 3 weeks does. One bad day of eating is irrelevant. Giving up entirely is not. When you zoom out, you stop chasing streaks and start building systems. Thinking in years also creates grace. You don't have to fix everything this week. You just have to move forward. That grace quiets the voice that says, you're behind. Because behind compared to what? A fantasy timeline you made up in your head? Progress isn't late. It's layered. And every layer you build today supports the version of you that's waiting on the other side. The future isn't some vague destination. It's built by today's choices. 1% at a time. The goal isn't to race there. It's to become someone who's ready for it when it arrives. The slow path is the real path. And when you embrace that truth, impatience loses its power. Future you is already in motion. Your job is to keep stepping forward. Long-term thinking gives meaning to small daily actions. Focus on becoming, not just achieving. Progress compounds slowly. Then suddenly, what would the future version of you thank you for doing today? Write down one identity trait you want. Take 1% action that aligns with it today. Chapter 11. The Feedback Flywheel, Using Tracking to Stay on Course. Every Sunday night, Devon pulls out a notepad and writes 2 columns, kept and skipped. Under kept, he lists the 1% habits he followed that week. Under skipped, he writes the ones that slipped. No judgment. No guilt. Just data. Then he draws an arrow beside each skip and writes what interrupted it. By the time Monday rolls around, Devon isn't guessing what to improve. He's got a game plan built from his own behavior. That's the magic of feedback. Not punishment, not pressure, just awareness. You can't improve what you don't measure. And you can't measure what you never track. The 1% rule thrives on clarity. When your goal is consistent, tiny progress, tracking keeps you honest and focused. Most people think of tracking as intense, spreadsheets, graphs, complicated systems. But effective tracking can be embarrassingly simple. A checkmark on a calendar, a tally in a notebook, a digital habit tracker with satisfying animations. It's not about perfection. It's about reflection. What did I do? What got in the way? What will I do next? The real power isn't in the numbers, it's in the patterns. Missed your habit every Monday? Maybe Mondays are too chaotic. Only journaled when you left your notebook on your pillow. There's your system. When you start tracking, you stop making excuses and start making adjustments. You become your own coach, your own scientist, your own strategist. Tracking also protects you from something sneaky, forgetfulness. When you don't record your progress, you forget how far you've come. You'll feel stuck, even when you're moving forward. But when you see those tiny checkmarks stacking up, something shifts. You realize, I'm doing it. I'm becoming that person, and that belief reinforces the behavior. Devon started with just 1 column, Did I do my 1% habit today? He'd check a box each night. That simple act of reflection kept the habit alive. Then he added a weekly review: what worked, what didn't, what to tweak. His habits got tighter. His awareness grew sharper, and because he never judged himself, he never gave up. He saw the game as practice, not performance. The key is consistency, not complexity. You don't need to track everything. Just track what matters. Start with your anchor habit, the one that kicks off your 1% momentum. Make it visible. Make it satisfying. Turn it into a chain you don't want to break. Then review it weekly, even briefly. Progress is built in the pause. Another benefit of tracking is course correction. Life changes. Schedules shift. What worked last month might fail this month. Feedback lets you adjust without shame. You're not failing, you're fine-tuning. The habit doesn't have to stay the same. The identity does. Over time, tracking creates a flywheel. Small wins create data. Data fuels awareness. Awareness guides smarter actions. Smarter actions lead to more wins. Around and around it goes. This feedback loop becomes the engine of your growth. You're no longer reacting, you're iterating. If you want to go far, track small. Don't rely on memory. Don't wait for dramatic change. Just keep tabs on what matters, adjust when needed, and trust the loop. The feedback isn't there to criticize you, it's there to coach you. Devon doesn't track out of obsession. He tracks out of clarity. His notepad isn't filled with pressure. It's filled with proof. And that proof compounds, just like everything else in the 1% life. Tracking builds awareness, not pressure. Small data creates big insight over time. A simple check-in system fuels sustainable improvement. Where are you guessing in your growth when you could be tracking? Pick one 1% habit. Track it for the next 7 days using the simplest system you'll actually use. Take care and be well.